United Kingdom, a union made up of 4 countries, namely England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, which together form the 6th largest economy in the world, with a GDP of $3 trillion. The Union is popularly known for being one of the largest empires on the planet, for its monarchy, and for its capital, London, which is one of the main financial centers in the world. Despite its importance, the British economy faces a deep crisis, with parts of the government unable to deliver effective services, and the economy appears to have reached a point of stagnation. Life is becoming increasingly difficult for many citizens, and the future seems uncertain. But make no mistake, this is just the surface of the problems, as the issues facing the UK are not new, they are much deeper than you think and are not going away anytime soon. But what went wrong? Well, stay with me in this video, you will understand everything. You already know, right? Grab that popcorn, hit the like button, and let's go. While it may seem like the UK has had an extremely difficult year, a broader analysis reveals that it has actually faced a troubled decade since 2008. During this period, the country has experienced one of the slowest rates of economic growth in its history, accompanied by a fall in living standards. This was due to the fact that prices increased faster than average wages, resulting in a reduction in purchasing power. When we adjust incomes for inflation, we realize that people today earn less than they did a decade ago. Furthermore, other alarming statistics indicate that the situation is not going well. Child poverty has increased, the incidence of violent crime has risen, and almost 9% of British families are worried about food shortages, which is surprising for one of the world's most rich in the world. Since 2020, the situation has deteriorated further, with the economy heading towards a recession, wages stagnating and inflation soaring. But how did we get to this point? There are 3 main reasons for this, all arising from decisions taken by the UK over recent decades. The first reason relates to the radical transformation of the British economy, which faced similar challenges in the 1970s. At that time, the country was plagued by strikes and protests, and was often called the sick men of Europe. The economic situation was so precarious that the United Kingdom had to turn to the IMF to avoid a total economic collapse. It was then that one of Britain's most renowned politicians came up with a revolutionary plan to transform the economy and the country when she took over as Prime Minister. Margaret Thatcher promoted a series of economic reforms, which included tax cuts, the sweeping deregulation of the economy and financial markets, the privatization of previously state-owned assets and companies, and the encouragement of home purchases to stimulate economic activity. Despite intense criticism directed both at the reforms themselves and at his ruthless leadership style, these changes produced great results. Thatcher managed to reverse the United Kingdom's economic decline, initiating 2 decades of economic growth from the late 1980s. During this period, an indicator of economic efficiency began to recover after decades of stagnation. The UK economy has begun to outperform most other G7 countries, driven by sectors such as finance, banking, and property development, which have benefited from the reforms. However, not everyone was satisfied. Thatcher was criticized for weakening British heavy industry, which historically employed much of the working class, and for making the economy dependent on the finance and property sectors. Despite this, the model worked until a major crisis hit the financial sector in 2008. The United Kingdom suffered the impacts of the global financial crisis, which severely affected all crucial sectors and caused damage to the economy as a whole. However, unlike many other countries, the UK never fully recovered. The root of the problem lies in productivity, that is, in the amount of economic value generated per hour of work. British productivity, except in the financial sector, lagged behind its traditional competitors such as Germany, the United States, and even France. This disparity continues to grow year after year. Although people in the UK work longer hours than in most European countries, their effectiveness at work is considerably lower. This productivity crisis was not as crucial when the financial sector was expanding after the financial crisis, as there were not many viable alternatives. However, it was not just the financial crisis that affected the UK, but also the way the country decided to respond to it. The British response to the financial crisis was unique and has become one of the main factors behind the problems it faces today. After 2008, the UK government chose to adopt a policy of austerity, which essentially involved cuts to public spending in virtually every area where the government spent money. This included drastic reductions in funding for police, welfare programs, social services, and local governments. Furthermore, funding for areas such as health and education has largely been maintained at the same level since 2008. The UK was not the only country to implement spending restraint measures after 2008, but two main distinctions stand out. Firstly, public spending cuts in the UK were remarkably harsh. Secondly, while most nations have limited their budget constraints to a few years, austerity in the UK has lasted without a true end. There is a growing body of evidence indicating that this policy of severe and prolonged austerity has had devastating consequences for British society, especially among low-income workers. According to the United Nations assessment, austerity policy has solidified high levels of unjustified poverty and suffering in the United Kingdom, particularly affecting those on more modest incomes. The number of people turning to food banks has increased dramatically, jumping from 25,000 to millions in 2021. Child poverty has grown, as has average household debt. The national healthcare system faces severe underfunding, resulting in the worst access to healthcare in Europe for Britons. Furthermore, due to budget constraints, the police force was reduced by 20,000 officers, representing 14% of the total, making them unable to adequately carry out their duties, especially in less privileged regions, which led to an increase in crime. Unfortunately, there is no sign that this situation is likely to improve anytime soon, as the government is effectively rolling out version 2.0 of austerity. Although the first phase of austerity was never ended, and is now being expanded in a public service system that already suffers from severe underfunding, it is not surprising that a wide range of professionals, including nurses, doctors, firefighters and railway workers, have entered on strike, claiming that this approach is no longer sustainable. Britain made a damaging decision by voluntarily choosing to leave the world's largest economic bloc, even though it was promised that Brexit would not harm, and even benefit, its economy. Now, after 6 years, there is a body of evidence that contradicts this claim, showing that Brexit is exacerbating all the economic problems facing the UK and generating new ones. With their exclusion from the European single market, British companies now face obstacles to exporting to the European Union. This results in higher costs, increased bureaucracy, and delays. This in turn has two main implications. For small businesses in the UK, it has become more difficult to expand their business into the European Union, which is Britain's closest and most significant trading partner. For large companies, it may make sense to consider relocating part of their operations from the UK to the European Union, given the size of the European market compared to the UK. Regardless of the choice, this results in less economic value generated in the UK and, as a result, less tax revenue for the government. Furthermore, even companies that do not export outside the UK are affected by Brexit, mainly due to the labor crisis. Sectors such as hospitality and construction relied on foreign workers from the European Union, and many of them have left the country since Brexit. Now, 3 in 4 British businesses face labor shortages, slowing the economy. The government's Office for Budget Responsibility estimates that Brexit will cost the country around 4% of its GDP, equivalent to £100 billion. Most of that damage is yet to come. Although the UK remains one of the largest and most developed economies in the world, it is facing challenges due to a combination of an underfunded government, Brexit, and the current economic decline. The UK's future looks less rosy than expected. Also check out the video from Italy, another European country in crisis. As always, thank you so much for watching.